I'm Christoph von Tomme, and welcome to the API Resilience Podcast. If you've ever wondered what it really is we do when we do APIs, and if you've wondered how APIs change organizations, our communities, and our society, look no further. This is the podcast you've been searching for. Welcome to the API Resilience Podcast. Today we have Praneet Singh, who is product manager at Intuit, who's responsible for the 1P internal developer portal. And he's built developer-focused marketplaces before at Adobe and Citrix. He's got seen a lot of different stories and how organizations work with developer portals. So it's going to be really exciting to compare and look a bit broader and from a higher perspective. Also, I was really surprised to read that out of work, you host a motorbike tour, which is super cool, and poker tournaments. That's really metal. So really welcome to the podcast, Praneet. Really happy to have you here. And thank you for coming on.
Thank you for inviting me. This is, I guess, been a long time in the making, so really excited to talk to you about developer portals and motorbikes if we go there. Definitely.
Yeah, I started exploring a little bit of conversation starters, and I got a metaphor that I want to run by you to see what you think about it. I got a couple of metaphors in my pockets, but the one that I've been having really a lot of success with lately when talking about AI and APIs and the role of maybe not only APIs, but interfaces in general, is that people, when you talk about AI, first it's machine learning or LLMs, or there's a lot of flavors. But when people talk about AI with, and I'm doing quote marks on the video, they typically are thinking about like a superhuman machine that can do whatever. And that's going to magically solve all the problems. And I think there's quite some problems with that idea. That we're really not there yet. Also, I think, and I had one person who was saying, when I said I wanted to invite him to the podcast to talk about APIs, and he was like, well, I don't really want to talk about that because I'm not sure that APIs are going to stay because, maybe AI is going to take over. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. So I started thinking about how do you explain the role of APIs in an AI world. So I came up with this metaphor of APIs as the roads that AI can travel. Potentially this autonomous robots that will be kind of like a self-driving car that could just take you to a certain task destination that you have. But then I was talking about this further, and then we realized that we don't yet have a GPS yet. And that maybe we first should be building a GPS for this. And that maybe what we're doing right now is actually building a GPS. But then if you build a GPS, you need maps, you need points of destination, like point of interest that you want to go to. You need a travel code, like what are you supposed to do on these roads? What can't you do? How fast can you go here? Who has to pay what to be able to access them? So there's this idea of APIs as and maybe also other interfaces as the roads that humans today travel, and then maybe in the future AI will be traveling. How does that sound? Does that connect?
Yes, that makes sense. I think I immediately related to information architecture for developer portals, especially the internal ones. Make it human readable first, and then start worrying about AI next. Yeah. So if your humans can traverse their portals, then your AI can do a better job of it as well. So I'm totally in line with that. I would say we have been going through multiple iterations of information architecture internally, just to make sure that when users come to the portal, they are able to find what they need, and we can invest into AI. But if they don't find what they need, the AI can only help so much. So we try to meet them where they are, when they want, and then assist them with the AI workflows next. As you said, solve the GPS first, and then the navigation next.
Yeah. Well, first build the maps and make sure that you have good maps. and then once you have good roads first, because maybe you don't even have APIs, maybe first build your roads, make sure you have good maps, and then we can start talking about GPS, and then we can get to, the self-driving car. Yeah.
You're totally right. Yes. I've seen, when talking to customers, they achieve going from point A to point B in various different formats, and you would not even know the roads that they've taken to go there.
Yeah.
And then that's where you figure out, okay, this is worth investing into because people are taking such drastic measures to reach point A to point B. Like you would never think about that these roads existed. So
Yeah.
I totally agree. Uh, do an audit first, figure out if your basics are right, and then invest into the future.
I think every team is being asked, like, so what AI thing are you going to do? So then you've also been tinkering with some AI applications for developer portal?
Yes. So our team is all about developer productivity, and different parts of the team is attacking different part of the value chain. Specifically, let's say code generation or chatbots to assist with information discovery, or do it for me use cases wherein we take many use cases and try to leverage an AI to provide users with more context. Within the developer portal realm, there have been certain cases like helping users figure out the right information is the first step, I would say. We know that LLMs can do a great job of stitching together things. So we've been running pilots of consolidating knowledge sources. Developers write documentation in different formats, in different places, and getting them all together in one has always been, hey, this is our model, stick to it, or, you can't publish. But we don't want to be constrictive, so we have enabled different forms of publications. But now the consumption's point is kind of split. So anybody who wants to read something about, let's say, team ABC or API ABC has to go to different sources. One might be in GitHub, one might be in Stack, one might be in internal wiki, one might be on the dev portal documentation platform. So we are running multiple experiments right now to figure out, okay, how do we make it easy for the user to find the information no matter what the source is. So stitching together those sources. And then we're also looking into multiple code generation tools that helps developers write code better and faster. And there are multiple other streams, but yes, like I said, different parts of the value chain attacked differently so that the velocity and the developer productivity can increase.
So one of the things I've always been worried about, but I've heard some organizations actually applying it, like with code generation, for example, is you have a non-deterministic system that is making recommendations to your customers. It's like, it sounds super scary to me. I suspect that it's better to provide the information to the bot that the customer owns, so that they know how much they can trust their bot, and that they should actually verify what is coming out of it. But I know that some organizations are actually just. I've heard one organization that said, like, actually, this is good enough, and yes, there's some small mistakes still, but for us, it doesn't. The value of an API call is like lower, and the ease of use is okay. Like, it's not like you have an enterprise customer that's going to come burn you down because something blew up. But
yeah, no, you're totally right, and the CodeGen team can talk more about this, but to draw a parallel, right? Like I think we start small and then we iterate on it. In the dev portal world, the way one of the experiments is running, that we want to make it easier for developers to write documentation and AI assisted documentation.
Right. Yeah.
So we don't expect AI to understand the entire context, write the entire doc, and then publish it. Obviously, there have to be a lot of manual interventions, and we started with summarization. We made it easy to summarize it first. So when users came onto a lengthy doc, and instead of making them go through the entire doc, just summarize it in like one block of text. And okay, if this is worth your time, go scroll down and read more. Now we're on the publishing side, so we're adding like an analysis, like, okay, how is the doc structure? Can the LLM provide you a score on the structure of the doc that you've written? Can it help you provide better intros? Replace it with context from different sources, enrich the context from other sources, and then with every step you pause, you verify its output, and you confirm. and then it feeds its data back to its main, I guess, application. And if it took you hours to iterate on it, now it's taking you way less than that, because you're playing this back and forth game and as making your document better, and you have a clear sight of what you want to achieve, instead of, okay, a big task of, my document is out of date, I need to make sure that it is hygienic and up to the standard that developers would want to read it.
Yeah. So, and do you see that's because one of the biggest problems with portals is it's not the features, it's the social aspect, like getting people to actually write the documentation. Is this helping with that, or?
So we again,
It's
the
real
great
early.
thing. It is early in Gen AI, but the great thing is we have been experimenting and investing into a lot of different formats, AI and non-AI. So up till now, we haven't enforced or have a strict enforcement of, okay, this is the one platform that you need to publish on. We have enabled teams to publish on it, but have a guidance that, hey, it doesn't matter that you have documentation on platform A, B, C. It's always better to onboard onto the dev portal documentation platform as well, because this way you're getting a lot of features out of the box. You're getting search, you're getting publishing management, you're getting more eyeballs for your documents within one central place. And some teams have taken up on it from us. Some teams are still wary of it. So we are experimenting on how to bring in more sources. So like using Google Docs workflow to directly ingest data into the portal, or making our indexes better, search indexes better, so that we can help the user query outside sources. Even if they are searching within the portal, it will feel native to them. So there are multiple experiments. And then the AI one that I just shared, like,
Yeah.
it's all about, I guess, if you look at it from a consumption standpoint, the user doesn't really care where the owner has their document, as long as they're able to find it. So as the portal team, or as the owner of the platform, we're trying to balance that out, that we don't want to upset the contributors, because they're an important part of the value chain, and we don't want to enforce standards on them that they don't like, but we also want to meet the consumers where they are.
So I have another metaphor for you. Basically, your developer portal is like the info service of your company. It's like where you can go and ask a question, and it can point you to, like, wherever you need to go, like a central entry point to find things. Yeah. So it's this. Yeah. And I think this is going to become more important as more things get automated.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say Intuit took a very strong stance on standardizing the way assets are created, or like software resources are created. And that has paid off, because now we have this centrally enforced platform. Now what's happened after a couple of years, that other platform teams within Intuit have seen value in it, that having the central governance is making sense to users. So they are seeing value in joining hands with us and becoming part of, I guess, the developer portal. So if earlier the portal was all about software resource creation management, now it's become more about data as well, more about project management as well, leadership views as well. So in the sense, our metrics are more around, okay, if our if our core persona was a backend developer, now our core persona is increasing to front end developers, data, leadership as well, and soon designers as well. So that's how we, measure our success
Yeah.
as a platform.
So I've been talking about this as an interface portal rather than a developer portal, because it's basically the central place where you can find all the interfaces that you have as an organization. Yeah.
Perfect. No. That's a great way to put it. Like, I think there was a shift in the name that happened a couple of years ago as well. We moved from developer portal to development portal internally. And that was representative of exactly what you said, that it doesn't really apply to just one persona, it's to any kind of development into it. And today, there are more than, let's say, 25 to 30 teams that are powering their interfaces within that portal. So they'll have sub pages within portal that power their experience. So their entire product is within portal, and the users are coming into portal with a mindset that, hey, no matter what workflow that I need, there's some place in the portal that I'll be able to go and carry out a self-service action
Yeah.
to get what I need. So yeah, and which brings us back to, I guess, the information architecture, right? Like you need a map for them because the number of things is growing, and so is the expectation from the portal that you guys should help me do what I want when I want,
Yeah.
kind of a thing.
And it's also like interfaces from being application programming interfaces that are that's a very, very narrow segment of it, actually, only. I think they're more becoming programmatic interfaces. And there's a whole lot of really interesting things, like in the past, you would have had a person who played the role of that interface. Like there was a salesperson that was the person who knew how to get the organization to do something. And now more and more those interfaces are becoming like programmatic, so that's it can automate and accelerate those interactions that you're having with an organization. It's basically so I'm a bioengineer by education, and in the complexity tier, like the complexity world, complexity science, there's something called signal boundary systems. And if you look at basically life, it's always signal boundary systems. Like, you have the cell membrane, and then you have hormonal receptors, and then you have the DNA, and you have the always there's like an encirclement with ways to amplify or to act on certain signals that are happening. And basically, this is what we're doing with businesses. We're developing a programmatic signal boundary system for the whole world, which is huge.
I agree totally. Standardization is going to be a big challenge, but I think yes, you're right. I think, but that's the way to scale up, right? Like you said, like earlier, it was more about finding the tribal knowledge within teams and using that to accelerate your journey or the developer journey. Now it's more about, okay, how do we put it to use so that everybody can use it and it can scale up. Totally, I think one of the recent initiatives we had was how do we make sure that the time to build your experience so that you can share it with the other developers reduces. And if it took, like, let's say 12 conversation hours to do it right now, how do we reduce it and bring it down to minutes? So no, I agree. I think we start somewhere, and we definitely make it easier to do those repeat tasks overall.
Let's change tech a little bit. Like, what are the things that you're excited about in your work? Like that you're like, okay, maybe patterns that you've seen between companies, or something that like new that you're working on, or that you can share. What are you busy with?
There is a huge push for us internally, like us as in the developer portal team internally, to onboard new personas. So that's one of the most exciting things that I think I'll be tackling in the coming few months. So up till now, the portal has been specific to developers and core developer, backend development, but we are seeing this growing need for other personas to also start using portals and make it easy for them to do those repeat tasks. So it's going to be an awesome challenge to solve for that. And the reason being that today multiple teams have done it differently. So you have a data portal which is specific to exploring tables, exploring the metadata around tables, helping write query around tables. Then there are designer portals wherein you can look at design components, design themes, tokens, and bringing them all together to make the dev portal as a single source of truth, and then personalizing it that it doesn't become overwhelming to the user. And no matter who you are as a user and what you need that day is kind of surfaced to you in the portal. That is a massive, I would say, lift on the portal. And if we do this right, I think that would be one of the major things I'll be excited about at the end of the day.
Because it starts with repeating tasks and then it goes on to programmatic tasks where you could have a single instance of the task also automated. Yeah.
Totally, yeah. And there's only like, if you have to expand the number of tasks, right? Like you either attack more portion of the pie or you find other pies to eat. So right now we are looking at, okay, there's a data pie, there's a designer pie, and we need to bring those in as well because it's about development and not about developer.
Yeah.
So that's how we're trying to look at it.
The way that I've talked about that is it's an interface jungle, and we're in the middle of the forest, and we only know what's really really close to us. So there's this interface folklore where different tribes have their own interfaces that they really understand, and it's just super tribal. Like, well, maybe interface tribalism. That's a new one. But, yeah, exactly.
No, I agree. The maps, right? The languages for the maps are different all over, I would say.
Mhm.
And there is, I think it falls upon the portal. One of the core responsibility for the portals is to decode those languages and provide a common basis for no matter who the user is. So yes, totally right. And there have been pushes around, like we have had multiple iterations and we're still going through multiple iterations of how to best make our information architecture resilient, so that these multiple interfaces, no matter where they reside and who's building them, at the end of the day, they can fall into some kind of like a structure so that the portal itself can scale up and we don't become the bottleneck for hiding or not being able to support new interfaces. So I think that's going to be like a constant problem to solve all the time.
We're working on a proof of concept to use AI or LLM hallucinations as a way to help to explore the interface landscape. I think that AI could play a part in standardizing and uniformizing interfaces, because I think that's always one of the biggest issues. It's like people have a problem and then they start just building and they build something that already existed and they do it over and over and over again. So, but if you have a system where when you go and say like, okay, how do I do X? And then you have a system that first looks like, okay, is there already a way to do it? And then if there's not yet, then it hallucinates like, okay, maybe we could have this kind of interface to do this problem. And then a product owner can review it and then maybe decide that actually that's something you want to build. So, and then you can have like an interface flywheel that helps you to figure out, build the map of your jungle. It's a proof of concept we're working on. So
that's awesome. And that's the first use of positive hallucinations, I would say.
Yes. So I was like, yeah, what if you would just embrace it? And what if you just say, okay, yeah, we're because I think everybody is trying to build, they're just trying to jump to the self-driving car right away. And then, and it's like making a wreck of the whole thing. But if you just say, well, we can embrace this, and we can just use it to bridge the cognitive gap between different domains, because I think that's what LLMs are really powerful for. In previous episodes, I've talked about with other guests, I've talked about how, I don't know if you're familiar with Wardley mapping. Have you heard of Wardley mapping? It's like
No.
it's I talk a lot about it because I think it's really cool. But it's a way to predict the future of technology value chains and how they're evolving. Okay. And basically, it's rather simple but ingenious in that it basically says technology always goes from inception to custom to product to like utility like. You have the first experiments with electricity, and somebody's like playing with frog legs, and it's a mess. And then
Yeah.
you start knowing, like, okay, we can do something interesting with this. Like, we can build you a custom power plant, and we can light up your village. And then, okay, now we have generators. That's just work, and you can just buy it. And then the last one is, and now this has become a utility, and you can just buy electricity from the network. And
Mm,
so I've been thinking a lot about that, like, because in the API community we talk about APIs as products,
mm,
but according to Worley Maps, that's not the end state. It should be something after that. It should be like APIs as utility, and then. But then you start thinking about commoditizations of APIs, and then what does that mean? Like, are we just going to have like standard APIs that everybody's always using the same? And I think actually LLMs could help with this aspect, because you could have these patterns that you're seeing from company to company, and then just replicate it, and just accelerates the rollout of programmatic interfaces across the landscape. And
absolutely.
this, yeah. So I think the digital transformation, I think, is an interface transformation where you're constraining all the information flows for your organization through interfaces, so
Mm,
that you can. It constrains them, so it makes them safer, but it also enables new things that you can do with them, like program new interesting applications on top of them. Um, and this transformation, this is what's going on right now. And I think, yeah, AI and, well, or LLMs more specifically, can have a really interesting application in them. So, but yeah, well,
yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I'll watch out for that. That's
Yeah,
yeah. I think standardization is needed pretty much everywhere. So this might be the approach of
it's not very popular because developers prefer making a really beautiful API that's
it.
handcrafted.
Yes.
But yeah,
I think how to enable experiences that, like you said, right? Like we don't have to aim for the self-driving car, but rather simple use cases that developers end up liking
yeah,
and end up repeat using. That's the, I guess, at least how I try to think of my local challenges and like my mini goals
yeah.
to accelerate the development journey. And it might be as simple as a summarization widget, or as complex as finding out intents of the developer and then surfacing where to map those intents. But yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I think, like, just like with the GPS, sometimes you overwrite whatever it's suggesting you. Like, if Google is about to send you into the strawberry fields, you you can say, like, oh, no,
Course correct.
stay on the
Yes.
highway. um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so, well, it's really exciting times. So, but you started explaining how you're rolling out additional personas. How are you doing that exactly? You're doing like persona per persona, or is it like certain subgroups that you're addressing, or how do you prioritize those personas?
Right. So we are figuring out the right way, and we're experimenting. I don't think we have to define it in a rigid format just yet. We are basing it off on one. We don't have to disrupt our core personas. Like we
Mhm.
obviously want to keep serving
Obviously,
them pretty nicely and support any more experiences that come along their way, but also use those learnings and see if there are some relatable concepts. So, how can software, let's say, for data and software development lifecycle, like those two are merging together? So, how can we provide a consistent experience that spans both across software development lifecycle as well as model development lifecycle, which is for data.
hmm
So if there are phases between those two that are common, and we are seeing personas that are intermingling, a developer becoming a person who also leverages data, or a data person who also starts to code a little bit more on the software development side, how to provide both those personas, whether they stay separate or become hybrid in the portal. So first, we're trying to figure out if they are like which domains to tackle,
Mhm.
and based on requests, based on the internal development life cycles, and then based on the phases we're trying to attack. Like, okay, you might be in this phase of your development journey. Here are some tools. Here are some documents that you should check out. Here are some interfaces that you might be interested in. Um, and then we have, like I said, like a very enforced software creation lifecycle. So we are trying to map out if different, let's say, platforms can also latch onto the same lifecycle and benefit from that.
Well, one of the trends I have seen coming up more and more is the data people that are getting in on the dev portal game. That's a
Mm,
big trend, I think. And in a lot of cases, that has been like through async API catalogs and things like that. But one of the things I've learned talking with data people and going to data events and like Kafka and things like that is that you don't necessarily have an API constraint around your message queue. So are you trying to wrap your like data streams into an API, or are you also having like data streams straight in in your interface cataloging effort?
I would say the way we're thinking about it right now is, um, as a company, if we have to make it easy to ship experiences that are more AI native, how do we do that? So going backwards from that, like, okay, up till now, let's say if you wanted as a developer to release a new web page, these are the steps and these are the tools and this is how the portal can help you. Now, if let's say you want to build a page with certain elements of AI in it, be it a chatbot, be it a summarization widget, be it some flow over there that uses LLM, how do we make it easy for you? There are some repeat patterns over there as well, and there are some repeat data patterns over there as well. So we are using that as and we're backtracking from there. Okay, so
Mm.
if we merge the world of building services, building web pages with building native data experiences, what are the common flows that the portal can help with? So how do you standardize LLM model access? How do you standardize use case creations, which is basically tracking how you can what all you can do with the LLM, or how to help developers familiarize themselves with prompt generation, prompt storing. How can the portal make it easy for you to access new features of let's say feature modeling, and not making it like two separate portals of your development journeys, so that hey, for stuff that I need to do to build an AI experience, I have to go here, versus for my regular stuff I have to go here. No, make it one single place so that no matter what application you're building, it flows natively in, and you can benefit from the existing benefits of the portal, which is searching through the catalog or discoverability of what the other teams are doing, and benefit like that 1 + 1 = 3 coming together.
And so it is mostly then the data story is very much driven by the AI story. Then, if I hear it correctly, or yeah.
No, we are starting with that, and
Mhm.
then we'll move on to other parts
Other
like
stuff. Okay.
the traditional, how to make data exploration easier within the portal. We currently have dedicated portals for those as well, but because this is a paradigm shift that has been affecting a lot of developers very recently, we want to see if we
Yeah.
can achieve some low-hanging fruits and
Mhm.
make it easy. At the end of the day, they are also trying to, experiment, and we want to enable them with those experiments quickly. So once we have like a proof of concept here, we see value in this, we'll shift and increase. So the way I think about it is right now it's service developers, or like developers becoming hybrid developers of building a native experiences. And soon we'll onboard data scientists also onto
Mhm.
our platform. Right now it might just be developers building AI experiences, but tomorrow we also want data scientists to come into the portal, um, tweak their models and access models from the portal itself, and not and worry about their development journey in the portal as well. So that's the new persona onboarding that might happen in the future.
One of the big polemics that are currently happening in the API and AI space is this, do you even need APIs anyway? Well, actually, I hinted at it in the beginning, but like like you could use tools like LangChain to just take data straight, and you can like jump over the API step. What's your opinion on this? As I said earlier, for me, weirdly weird realization was that message queues are unstructured data. It's just basically whatever you want to throw in that message queue, it gets processed and it gets stored. But then if you want to actually turn that data into information, you have to apply constraints to find like the useful information that's in there. You have to apply a mask to it. And then and I'm not a developer, so, but the way that I understand it on like an abstract level is that you're applying a data mask or potentially data model to a message queue to filter out the information that follows that structure that you're looking for, and then that's you can then expose with an API and like turn it into a more constrained information flow. And it's this, I think, with LLMs, people are just throwing stuff at it, and it's like, I'm just going to throw a bunch of stuff at this thing, and then let's see what it does. And then something comes out, and like, oh my god, it actually was able to do something with this.
Do something.
And I think that this is the path to more dangerous stuff. That the lack of constraints takes away your ability to set governance, verify that you're actually sharing data that should be shared, setting rate limits or monetizing it. Like
Right.
it's like with a cell, that if you have a cell, inside of the cell, molecules can just move. Well, it's not fully that true, but they can move around somewhat freely. But then when you want to cross the boundary, like the cell will not just let go of its energy sources. It will be closing those in, and then only in a very specific way. Maybe you'll excrete sugar or something like that. And I think so. While you could have all your data like internally inside of an organization, maybe you can allow your data scientists to go wild and play around with unstructured data. But when you're going to be exposing that to the outside world, you want to apply a mask to constrain it so that you can, But it's it's something I'm busy with, because it talks against the thing. A similar thing is with documentation. Like, we've gone from a world where technical documentation used to be super, super structured. It's like a data, XML, where, and then we've gone all the way to Markdown. And it's just whatever. So it's like this shift from CMS to very unstructured, but then you still somehow have to like collect the structure out of that. And maybe that's maybe a good question for you. How, because I think you hinted at it already before. It sounds like you have templates that are fulfilling this enabling structure that helps your organization to say, like, okay, this is how we deal with documentation, and you should follow this structure. Is that how it works for Intuit?
Yes, I would say. So we tried on different approaches, and we are experimenting as well right now. But we have a CMS today that we prescribe to the users that, hey, if you have to onboard to the dev portal documentation platform, go use a CMS, right? And it will help you in various different formats. And we have templates, boilerplate templates that you can leverage right out of the bat to make your documentation into a proper structured format and what users are expecting to see over there. And we are leveraging that pretty much for all the capabilities internally. And we're adding more and more stuff. So very recently, one of the sister teams that I work with, they have they're working with the documentation platform in their portal to append every capabilities documentation with FAQs. So they are generating FAQs based on support
Hmm.
requests, and they're using LLM to kind of summarize it and then post the FAQs in the next to the documentation itself. Now, what that will help is that, okay, maybe as a producer you didn't think about these from the get-go, but from the support requests that you're getting,
Yeah.
here's how to enrich your documentation with that. So we are playing around with that, and then for the users who are not so comfortable using the CMS or don't want to use the CMS because their team is used to something else, we are also looking at workflows on how to ingest that data into the documentation platform, templatize it, and then expose it to the users. But I think that will always be like a push and pull problem. Like there'll always be some governances that you'll have to set, and then there will have to be some innovation that you'll have to leave it up to the producers, because you don't want to constrict the flow of the writing, as well as helping them produce more docs at the end of the day that help users. But bringing on, I think, going back to your original question, if the unstructured data problem, right? I think there is an initiative that we are going through right now, wherein we are setting like some baseline APIs across the board for accessing developer data, or like development related data as a whole. Thinking of this as more like an Uber level API of APIs,
Hmm.
wherein you are setting a structure of onboarding different teams APIs into this super graph, so that no matter what you need as a user, you know that 10 teams have worked towards this, and I can use a single API to
Hmm.
access all of their work. And those teams have, investing some time to onboard to this. We call it the level zero API, so that soon we'll reach a state wherein this standardized one single point of interface API becomes the norm to access all your development related, productivity related data, and even take actions on them. So tomorrow, if we reach a state where we're asking LLMs to, kind of take actions, and it will all be based on these APIs and the governance and the standards that we set around these Meta APIs. So I think we have to address this bottoms up, and then see the implications of how LLM treats it, and how developers would want to use LLMs to access such APIs. But yeah, totally. I think, right, like if we get ahead of the game right now, then it will make it easier to enforce standards later in the day.
One of the episodes we recorded before this one with Jeff Eaton 15 years ago, or like we've had a very long history talking about structured data and unstructured data, and
Okay.
it's just so fascinating how like that dialogue playing out, because it feels that we're structuring more and more information in the world. Like we're going from
Yes.
this blah mess to, okay, this is more structured. But then at the same time, as we're doing that, like you see some of these regressions, like yeah, like if you just have markdown and basically you have to remember all the rules that you have to apply, or you have to start applying linters. But then yeah, it's fascinating, this push and pull. And I guess it's the cost of structure, like because when you apply structure,
Yes.
that costs a lot more effort, and also maintaining it and making sure that it doesn't degrade. Maybe that's an area where LLMs can help us. But yeah.
Yeah, somebody I think explained the job of an LM, or the early LMs, very simply, like think of them as like the power of thousand interns or something, wherein they might not know the context
Yeah.
of what's going on, but they can help you with those tasks that you would not be able to do by yourself, or would not want to do. So totally, if you enforce standards, there will be some who take it up nicely. There will be some who change it up and find ways around it. There will be some who totally interpret it in a different manner. But the very reason that you wanted to enforce standard was to make it easy for the users.
Yeah.
right? And if that's not being achieved, then you need to either take a relook at the standards or help out the publishers in that way. Yes, and if I think there is certain value that I see LLMs providing over here, wherein they can, if not enforce standards, but at least help meet standards halfway for the
Yeah.
publishers, that make it easy for them to live up to these standards. And they say, okay, that if I hey, a portal, you provided me with like five sub structures of a document. I don't think I'll be able to come up with content over there. But if you think that the LLM can help me identify content, I'm totally okay to leverage it and provide my developers with that document, because I know that I'll end up getting more support requests down the line if I don't enforce these standards. So I think it's more about meeting them halfway and then showing them the value that the future value of onboarding to this is much greater. You might not see an immediate value out of it.
So instead of just saying like, oh, we don't need structured data anymore, maybe we're going to have more structured data because the LLMs are going to help us to structure it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Mhm.
something like that. And you need to, I think, constantly train the data sets and refine the data sets and train the LLM into your context. But yes, I think we'll have to start the experiments on both sides. One is
Mhm.
on this enforcement, one is on the no enforcement, and see which how do we meet in the middle.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of um, experimentation with or breadth being provided right now with LLMs that can, I guess, help us find close to the right answer.
One of the things, and we've had this also with some of our customers that are in this super complex landscape where you're dealing with acquisitions, a completely different technology chains, and then you're still trying to onboard everything onto a single portal. And what do you see as the biggest challenges there?
Yeah, I think over there, we've had internal acquisitions like multiple different products, but identity, right? And
Yes.
mer- merging this identity as well as getting the new developers aware of the processes that you have set in place. If there were some pain points that you chose to ignore the last time, they will be resurfaced now with these new users coming in and taking a fresh look at it. So I think I see it more as, was your experience truly a self-serve experience, or
Mm.
was it more like a white glove implementation? And whenever new users come in bulk and try to onboard, they find these gaps, and you should take that as an opportunity to make the experience truly scalable for the future.
Mhm.
And maybe, you made the right decision at that point of time, but there needs to be pivot right now. So internally, we are always, there's a big, I would say, principle around reusability as well as contribution. So if we call it inner sourcing, by
Mhm.
if
Oh, yeah, yeah. Mhm.
somebody sees if somebody sees a problem in a process, they propose a solution and we help them implement that solution. And a lot of our time goes into supporting these solutions, because as a platform, we can't scale up if we keep building stuff. But we want to help people contribute if they see problems. So if tomorrow a team comes in and says that, hey, you have this no code wizard to creating a basic document, which includes setting up the markdown file, adding links, creating structures. But have you guys not thought about maybe introducing Slack channels or linking it to Stack Overflow? And we're like, hey, that's a good point. How about you propose something for it, and we'll help you change the process and update the process according to your contribution. And then they increase the value that they bring in, and we internally increase the value that we deliver to the users. So that is a very hard problem to track. Like at the end of the year, I think the number of contributions that you enable is one of the metrics that we track quite closely, because these contributions can be very small, from let's say a text change to like adding a totally new notification service to the platform, right? And uh, they are the ones that end up increasing the value of the portal to the users, because these are pain points bought from the customer's pain point, built by the customers itself. So that's how I look at it. Like if your portal is truly a self-serve experience, the maturity can still be very different from a customer landscape.
Mhm.
And we have these internal levels of maturity. How mature are you truly is a difficult problem. Uh, we do realize that there's always room for improvement over there.
And you talked about inner sourcing. Does that mean that and so inner sourcing, for people that are not familiar with it, it's basically open source inside of your organization. So like you have you're facilitating people to contribute to a project that they're not the owner of, so that the projects get better from interactions with different teams. Does that mean, like, how much? So how big is your team? Like how big is the dev portal team right now? Does that mean that you're piggybacking on other departments' resources primarily, or how does that operate?
So the core dev portal team is about, I would say, about 15 people, 15 to
Mhm.
18 people. Um, but we sit in a developer productivity org in Intuit, and that org is uh, uh, at least 10, 20 times bigger than that. And each of those teams is responsible for, let's say, helping users manage their Kubernetes deployments,
Yeah.
or code gen tools, or incident management, observability. So they are separate teams over there. And we, as the core team, take care of certain services like, let's say, RBAC, identity, helping users with the overall information architecture, um, and documentation platform. But for, let's say, setting up the infrastructure or connecting to the gateway or the mesh inside, that's where these teams come in, and they work with us to provide those experiences within the portal. Um, but these are still our very sister teams, like they work very closely with us.
Mhm.
When we talk about inner sourcing, we don't even consider them, because we consider them as part of our broad team
Yeah.
that
Right.
deliver experiences. These are teams, let's say somebody in Intuit QuickBooks realizing something that this can be improved, and that team comes in and adds value to the portal. And that's those are our unplanned delights for our customers that we never thought we would be providing to the user, but we end up increasing the satisfaction, the developer satisfaction at the end of the day.
Mhm. So, then what technology are you using? Because you talked about the CMS. What, if you can share it? Yeah.
Yeah. So, so again, I think there are a couple of the experiments over there.
Uh-huh.
Uh, we have OICMS internally,
Uh-huh.
which is based on GitHub Markdown language, but we are experimenting with even Google Docs and other sources to figure out, okay, do we need a CMS?
Yeah.
If we do, what kind of CMS do we need? So we are rethinking about it. But there have been multiple different formats up till now.
Yeah. 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 Okay. Yeah, because that's always we work with Drupal,
Mm.
but that's PHP, and then sometimes developers are, well, yeah, I don't think I need to tell
Yeah.
that, yeah, but it's a really powerful structured content CMS, so it's very good in creating like specialized content types and then structuring information and all of that stuff. Yeah, it's not as cool as like a React app or something like that. But yeah, yeah,
Yeah, the portal itself is React and Node.js,
yeah,
but um, I think documentation to different teams means different things. So we are
yeah.
trying, even before standardizing a CMS, and we today do have a CMS, but before I guess standardizing that and across every team, we are taking a relook at what are the different ways we can look at documentation from their lens and then come to a source for our users to access it.
Well, we should definitely keep talking, because I think you're doing a lot of the same kind of research that also really fascinates me, and also us as a company. So, and I think that the whole story of how do you eat the elephant, like all of this documentation, and like how do you enable everybody to come together, and the inner sourcing story was really fascinating. Cool stuff.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna look forward to hearing more about the way you're using hallucinations. That is a very
Yeah.
first time I've seen that, so definitely interested into watching out for the progress over there.
Yeah. Is there something you would still like to share with the audience, like a specific pitch you want to give for a poker game or a motor?
No, I think if you're in the Bay Area and want to talk about the portals, hit me up. I'll be more than happy to, I guess, play poker and talk photos at the same time.
Very cool. Praneet, it was a great pleasure. Thank you very much for coming on to the podcast. Keep us informed about your journey, and yeah, hope to see you at some of the future conferences, and talk deeper, even if I'm not a poker player.
Definitely. Thank you so much for inviting me, Gustav. I hope to see you soon.
See you soon. That's it for this episode. This episode of the Resilience Podcast was brought to you by Pronovix. You can learn more about our company at pronovix.com, and thank you for listening.